Hey guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today I'm going to walk you through this fast and easy project. It requires 18 fat quarter bundles and a little bit of background fabric and we'll be good to go. So let's jump on in. Okay guys, I started off with the fat quarter bundle from Connecting Threads. It's called Sweet Jubilee. I will put a link in the description here or maybe pop a link, I don't know, somewhere so that you guys can watch that video. I definitely have an unboxing video so you can see all of the fabrics one at a time. It's a great, fun, kind of patriotic, a little bit red, white, and blue, a little spangle, a little fireworks, all of the fun stuff. I did add one fat quarter to it that I had in my stash that matched, and then a couple of yards of background fabric to make the sashing. This was a really fast project. I think I started this about 11 o'clock. It's a Sunday. It's been a little bit crazy at my house, and it is 4:30, and I've got the entire quilt top done. So this is definitely a doable quilt in a day project. This is a free pattern. I will put a link in the description below so you guys can download it too. It was fast and fun, so I can't wait to show you all the steps. Okay, guys, so we're going to have two different patterns that we're going to cut out of our fat quarters. And these are going to both be pretty straightforward. We're going to make 12 fat quarters that have this shape. Let me see, maybe I can cut these sideways for you all. That may be easier. So I'm just going to get a nice clean edge on one side. And I'm just lining up with this line on my selvage just to kind of have a starting point. I do want to make sure that I'm going through all three layers because I'm going to cut these three at a time. There we go. Okay. Now I do like to use this mat just because it's easy to kind of spin it around. It's like my giant spinning mat. Okay, so now we're going to cut two strips that are 6 inches. And I had someone ask me recently about a Stripology ruler, and I actually have just ordered the extra large, but it hasn't arrived yet. So we're doing this with my go-to. So we've cut two 6.5-inch strips. This is going to be what's left. Now, according to the pattern, we can use a 2.5-inch strip for binding, and it's going to be a scrappy binding. And then the pattern lists this as leftovers, but I'm going to add that to my string basket. And it's not going to be enough to do another 2.5-inch strip. So I'm just going to bump it in because I'm planning on it going into that string basket. I just want to make sure it doesn't really have to be square, but I'd like for it to be square. So I'm going to have these strings that will be left over and just, whoops, go into my string basket. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to do is just cut off all of our selvages. I guess I could have done that first. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm staying nice and square, and I'm trying really hard not to move these just a ton. I kind of bumped them over so that it would be clear to see where my cut was, but I'm trying not to move it any more than I absolutely have to. Okay, so this little tiny bit at the top was my string for my scraps. And then this next section is our fabric C for the pattern. It's our scrappy binding. And then these are the remaining two that we're going to be working with. So the first one, we're going to cut a 12-inch section and then one 6.5-inch section. I'm sorry, 12.5 inch. So I'm just going to line that up with my ruler. And if you're not comfortable cutting with your left hand, then I would swing that mat around. I do like the flexibility there. Okay, so these are our piece A. Whoopsie. So we're going to put that on the design board. And then this will be our piece B. And piece B is just going to be a 6.5 inch square. And then these will go into my strings basket as well. And this one's going to be pretty easy. We're just going to do bump, 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 3 6.5. And I'm going to grab a shorter ruler just so it's easier to use. Okay, so that's how we're going to cut 12 of our fat quarters, just like that. You can cut them 3 at a time, 1 at a time, whatever works for you. And the other cut pattern we're going to do is very similar. Let me get us 3 more fat quarters. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and cut off my selvages first this time. Then I'll square up this top part. All right, so now we're going to do 2 6.5 inch rows again. And then I'm also going to get that 2.5 inch cut across the top. So I'm just lining up my ruler because this ruler is 6.5 inches. And then I'm going to line this one up on my 2.5 inch line here. Okay. And this is my string, so don't worry about this. This is kind of that bonus project if you want it. All right, so I'll put that in my string basket. And I'm going to just set that aside and we're going to work on these 6.5 inch squares. So now we're going to do one section that is 12.5 inches. And I'm going to do these separate so not to be confusing. Okay, so these are our piece A's. And then what we have left is one piece B. And I could have used the line on my ruler to cut those both at the same time. Again, that Stripology ruler would probably come in pretty handy. But this is a pretty fast project, so I'm not super worried about it. And then these go into my string basket. So of the first way we cut, we're going to cut 12. Of the second way we cut, we're going to cut 6. And then I'll meet you guys back here when all the cutting is finished. Okay, guys, these blocks are going to come together pretty quickly. So we're going to take, for each square that we're going to make like this, we're going to need 2 of our A blocks, and we're going to connect them to a B. So I'm just going to try to kind of disperse my colors and my patterns a little bit. And we'll just kind of try to keep it really scrappy. And then we're just going to sew these on with the 1/4 inch seam. And if you prefer to pin, you absolutely can. These should be pretty straightforward, but if you're new, maybe that extra step will help. And this is just a 1/4 inch foot with a little guide on the side I'm kind of playing with at the moment. And then we're going to get 3 more for our center row. So I want to just make sure again that I'm kind of spreading out my patterns. I'll put those at the ironing station. We'll press those in just a minute. Okay, so let's go press these. Okay, first thing we're going to do is set all of our seams. And then we are going to press these away from that center. So I'm just going to press it towards this outside piece. And then I'll flip it around and do the other side. So set my seam, press it open. Now our other 2 pieces, we're going to press towards the larger side. So I'm going to place my larger side on top, so that makes it nice and easy. If you're new to quilting, that is the easiest way to decide which way you're going to be pressing towards. For me, at least, it just makes it kind of a no-brainer. Wherever I want to press, I'm going to put that side on top. So I'm going to let those cool off for a minute. And you can do that quickly by placing it under a clapper. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is just piece together our blocks. I'm going to snip those apart because those were still connected. And this is going to be my center block. And so I'm just going to arrange it and see which way I like it best. Again, you're going to want to have the long sides alternating, but I probably don't want to have the red on the red. So I'm going to switch this one to this end and see what it does here. Oh no! Now, so this kind of thing is going to happen a little bit because I've got so few patterns. So this is where if you have another one to test out, okay, I'm going to make one more of these that doesn't have the fireworks pattern in it, and I will be right back. Okay, so I just made us an extra one. It's actually the reverse of this. So that's going to happen a little bit in this because we do have so many redundant colors. So you may want to, once we get this moving, we're going to piece all these at the same time and then you'll have lots of options. I was just trying to show you that first block. Okay, so now we'll swap it for the one that was kind of feeling pretty duplicated. And there we have lots of variety in this block. So now we're ready to stitch it together. So the first thing that we're going to do is flip this one onto the middle row. And what I'm going to do is get these two seams to nest. So you can see one's pressed one direction, the other is pressed to the top. And then when I squish those together, you will feel them butt together with your fingertip. So once you have that together really tightly and aligned top to bottom, then we'll go over to the sewing machine and we'll sew it straight down. Okay, so I've just moved over to the sewing machine. I'm going to use that same 1/4 inch foot and we're going to sew right on it. Now at this point you could take it over and press it open, but I'm just going to flip it up and out of our way. I know that my small square is going to be opposite this large square. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. These seams should nest if you pressed correctly. I unthreaded my needle. I know it's overkill, but they're the scissors I have because I took my snips to the table. Okay, let's try that. So I've nested that seam again just to make sure it didn't budge on me. Okay, so then we would take this over to the pressing station and we're going to press away from that center block so that everything is pressed towards these sides that have fewer seams in them. And then we're going to repeat that until we have all of our blocks made. Now I like to chain piece, so at this point I would probably get into a little bit of a relay race situation because I know I'm going to use all of these and I would just go and zip through and attach something to each and every one of these and then press them all at the same time and then do my rows of 3. So on the pattern we're going to need to make 24 of these, just in case you need to count, make sure you're not duplicating. So I will speed this up for you guys. Okay, my needle keeps coming unthreaded. So to me, that's usually an indicator that I probably need to change my needle. So I'm going to do that real quick. I have this little mason jar with a plastic lid that I reuse in my sewing room. I just keep all my needles and pins in there. I don't know if you guys can see them until I get a fair amount of them, and then I dispose of them. That way I'm not creating a hazard. So I typically use 80 needles. Okay, so let's see if that stays threaded a little bit better for us. Okay, so now we're going to go press all of these. Again, for these 3 blocks, we're going to press away from the middle block. And for our 2 with the 12.5 inch and the 6.5 inch, we're going to press towards our 12.5 inch size. So I'm going to go ahead and press all of those and come right back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pressed everything open, or actually pressed it so that the seams will nest, and I've laid out on design boards each of my blocks. You don't have to do this in advance, but it does ensure that you don't end up at the very end where you have a bunch of the same repeating patterns, because I wanted to kind of at least spread them out as much as I could. So now I'm just going to flip my blocks together and sew each block separately, and then we'll go press. And normally I would chain piece a little bit more, but just because I did take the time to go ahead and lay these blocks out, I want to go ahead and make sure I don't mix them up. Guys, so that's all 10 of our remaining blocks. That took me about 15 minutes in real time, just in case you're curious. And I'm going to go press all of these at the same time. I'm going to press away from the middle, and then I'll get them up on the design wall so you guys can see them. Okay, guys, so now we finish up all our blocks. I've got them laid out. I laid them out from kind of top to bottom, if you will. Don't let that be confusing. It just makes it easier for me and my daughter to reach. And now we're going to go ahead and add our sashing. Now, I decided to go with just a plain white on white for my sashing. I think a colored sashing would be really cute with the right patterns, but this just felt really busy to me, and I wasn't certain I wanted to add something else with more pattern to it. So maybe something that is really subtle. A grunge would probably be great, but I just didn't want to add any more colors to what was already kind of going on with a lot of different designs here. So I'm going to cut that white on white sashing. It's all going to be 3.5 inches wide, and I will show you guys how we're going to put it all together. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is add our sashing to our pieces. And remember that I've laid this out cattywampus, so I'm sorry for that. That is a little bit confusing. But if you think about this as being your top left corner, we're going to put it in between the top and the second row, and then this one and this one. And then between that, we're going to have an entire length. So we're going to do shorter pieces here. I believe that is 8.5 inches, but I'd have to look back. And then we'll put our 8.5 on 1, 2. We won't need it on the third because for the whole length of the quilt, we're going to have one of our longer strips again. So we're going to go through on the entire quilt and between attaching this one to this one and then this one to this one. We're going to do that for all 4 of these rows. Okay? Okay, so now we have all 4 of our rows sewn together. We're going to add the sashing piece that goes between each of these. So we're going to add 3 sashings, one here, and one right there. Okay, guys, so now I've got my entire top sewn together with the exception of our outer borders. Now I have rotated this back, so it is now narrower, and then the length is the longer part. So please don't let that be confusing. I was trying to get back to normal. Sorry for that. I know that changing things in the middle of the pattern make it difficult, but my daughter actually helped me get the blocks up on the wall and we kind of organized them, and she's a little shorter, so I was trying to just make it work for her, and I need to make it work for you guys. So I will remember that next time. Anyways, so now we've got this entire top put together. We've got all of our sashing in the middle. We're going to add the outside sashing. So we're going to add the longest row here and here, and then we're going to come back and do the top and the bottom. So I will get those 4 pieces on, and then we'll get it back on the wall so you guys can see it. This is going to be a big quilt. This was 18 fat quarters. And then we also have our sashing strips and our little border. This is a 3.5-inch border sashing combo. I think the proportions work, but I might do something a little bit smaller, like even down to like a 1.5-inch, because this quilt is getting quite large. So I'm following the pattern exactly like it is. I wanted something to be able to incorporate these fat quarters. It's coming together really fast, and it's going to make a really great quilt. Okay, guys, that's a wrap. This was a fun, quick, what, 5-hour project. I definitely can handle some more of these. I like doing my intricate patterns occasionally, but every now and then it's nice to just rinse and repeat and move on to the next one. And this was a fun way to get to play with some of the connecting threads fabrics. I have used some of their other pre-cut, or excuse me, pre-boxed things before, but this is the first time I've had one of their fat quarter bundles. And honestly, I really did enjoy working with it. The only difference I really noticed was that I feel like I probably still have threads on me. I feel like there's been a lot of like loose threads, but that's probably speaking more to the fact that I did not starch these as heavily as I typically do, because I knew none of the cuts were going to be on a bias. So I really wasn't that worried about it. So it's probably mostly due to starch, but all in all, I was really pleased with these fabrics and they look beautiful, and I cannot wait to quilt this one out. So if you enjoy watching these tutorials and some of my unboxing videos, definitely hit that like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. If you know any other quilters that might benefit from my channel, I'd love to hear about it. And if you have any tips and tricks for me, I always love the feedback. So until then, guys, I will see you next time.